a turban. Little ones stay cursing, older ones out twerking. Talking about lack of education, streets are always dangerous. Bluetooth speakers playing, do you really hear what they saying? Do you know what that mean? Are you down for the team? They speak through signs and symbols, you can learn about these things. Live by 9/11, Club of 27. Once you think that they in heaven, nah bruh, it's a legend. It's all according to the code. I'm Illuminati with my mind, body, and my soul. That's why they snatching bodies, everybody in a Holly Grove. Deception is a hobby, switching roles with the auto clone. We call that an auto hoax.
Man, what you trying to prove? Don't you know we've been around the globe and been to the moon?
Forget it, that's an auto hoax.
You tripping, times two. What about the shootings that they always cover on the news?
Real, that's an auto
They
hoax.
don't move, we will make the way. Let it spray, right reality like an AKA. Let them know we don't play. They live like life's a party, but it's really like a breakaway. Meditate, focus your attention on your better days. You know what I'm talking about. Don't let these slimy narcissists, the antichrist out there turn your eye. Freedom of speech is actuality. That's why the truth must spread by word of mouth, word of mouth. It's all according to the code. Damn Illuminati with my mind, body, and my soul. That's why they snatching bodies, everybody in a Holly Grove. Deception is a hobby, switching roles with the auto clone. Let me turn on my auto hoax.
Not even a proven fact. The floor curves into a spinning ball, and you can test for that.
Globe is an auto hoax.
Man, you must be trolling me. Scientific theories aren't what they are shown to be.
Yup, that's an auto hoax.
So what you're saying is you don't accept the claim that's missing proof, then you label it.
Exactly, it's an auto hoax.
Wow, sports is scripted by the number code. What do I really don't? Let me turn on my auto.
Alright, we are live. It's 11:16 p.m., 5/30/2024. Much later than usual, but I thought it was necessary. I was monitoring the news today and the responses to the guilty verdict versus God Emperor Trump, and we're now witnessing his apotheosis. The comparisons to Jesus are rampant, and the JFK stuff is off the charts, and we've been covering this stuff as it's developed. By the way, I just sent out live stream notifications, so you should see a flood of individuals floating in here any moment. Phones are open, and I double-checked the system tonight. No gremlins. We've had issues with the phones for the last few days, but if you check right now, they are open, and you can go ahead and call in if you have any sort of questions, comments, insights, or anything to add. And let's see here. Okay, there we go. Notifications have been sent. It's been a very tricky week here. I'm in the process of setting up the 24/7 streams again. A lot of people have been asking, and there's still a lot of IPS related music, interviews, and a lot of content going back years, and so I think it would make sense to bring that back and then go back through the years and choose segments of various topics that we've previously covered and revisit them in this way. So I look forward to making that happen. We have a lot of things to talk about today, but let's start with the JFK Trump thing, which is huge. Frank Murr says, I just watched Civil War, cameras, weapons, assassinated president. Horrible film, by the way, not even cohesive. Oh yeah, that wasn't even a movie. That was just a manifestation of Trump derangement syndrome. It was, if you saw the trailer, you saw the whole thing. It was just a pretty straightforward murder fantasy. And they've been killing Trump in fantasy, in fiction, for some time. I believe it was back in 2016. They did Julius Caesar in the Park, and it was obviously Trump. And the more I look at this, the more certain I am that we're examining the build-up to a major fake event. And we have to say this, it's going to be fake and staged. There's a lot of people who are calling this out as though they have inside knowledge, they have reason to believe, which sure, however, they're operating under false pretexts. They think it's going to be real. Laura Loomer says they're going to try to assassinate Donald Trump after they see tonight how much support he gets after his guilty verdict today. Goes on to say they want to throw him in Rikers jail. And there are some making quite a bit about the date that he'll be sentenced, which is 7/11, and we'll get into that. The real Kim Shady, who's a QAnoner, says tried, convicted, we all know what's next, hashtag just like Jesus, with a couple of popcorn emojis. Now, the popcorn emojis are popular among the noners who believe that these are instances where they see it's all just a movie and they have front row seats. And we rightfully claim this. We are reaching for popcorn, not ammo in this sense, but they're doing so under this notion that it's going to be real, staged, real. They don't really differentiate it. It's more like, I don't know, it's a doomsday thing. But they're comparing him to Jesus, just pointing that out. They're saying they know what comes next. But then there's more. Because they've reinterpreted the word beast for Revelation 13 to mean spirit of life. So this particular Q prophet says, therefore, I'm not referring to the beast of Revelation as Satan, the Antichrist, but as animal or spirit of life. So that's a radical reinterpretation. But what's interesting is this is the same person who I had noted earlier has been making her own prediction for 8/4 being the date that Trump gets it. And I thought that's interesting because you've got JL26, Jurassic Liars, talking about this event in one context, that this guy's basically the devil, Antichrist. And then you have the QAnon side where they're saying he's Christ. And I've called this out before, that the QAnoners are literally ready to worship him. And this is quite biblical, which is one of their favorite things to say. It's gonna be biblical. Let me catch up on some comments here. Joined by Jungle Jim, Jennifer Reeves, Ears Up, Cubstar, JT, Dinah South, J Diggs says, I remember the random 2 a.m., 3 a.m. Yes, yes. My schedule's going to open up. I've had a number of roadblocks and obstacles, but we're clearing the paths out now. And the recent progress on the lawsuit is a big deal. That was delaying a lot of what I've been doing, but this legal work doesn't do itself, and I don't have the resources to outsource it, nor could I convince somebody to do it, even though I believe it's eminently winnable. But to me, it's just a matter of the knowing where to. I guess for me, this whole process has been very educational. I'll leave it at that for now. It's been like trial and error, but I think we actually got it this time. So we'll find out soon. Goldfinch has about 27 days to reply to the summons, and that's really the bottom line. Either it's a default judgment situation, or the court takes some kind of action to bring him in, depending on how fast I can escalate this from civil to criminal. And I think it would be nice if I could get him arrested at the same time as his daddy. So Trump's getting arrested. It'd be great if we can get Q tossed in. But he would be in for real. I mean, this isn't show business. This isn't PSYOP. This is a cyber criminal that we're talking about. Okay, something else too. NASA, the Boeing Starliner, is launching tomorrow. Well, in a couple days. We've been waiting for this. We've been waiting for this impending disaster, in my opinion, just based on how Boeing is seemingly cursed. Los Angeles, May 30th, the U.S. National Aeronautics and Space Administration. I thought it stood for Never a Straight Answer. Are targeting Saturday, June 1st, for the launch of the first crewed mission on the Starliner spacecraft. I think we ought to cover this live. And they're going to the ISS. Now, how is that even possible? If the ISS is fake, then what does it say about the rocket launch? Where do they think they're going? Somebody should tell them. Joined by Lean Dion, thank you for joining. Again, live stream notifications just went out, and I mistakenly sent it to a small segment, and I don't know how many people have their notifications on, but it's no big deal. It's also late. A lot of people are sleeping. Okay, let's continue here. Laura Loomer says, breaking, Trump's donation page just crashed because so many people are donating after he was found guilty. This is just orders of magnitude a greater a grift than getting swatted for money and attention. This political persecution thing has never been played so well that his followers are all in right now. It's all in. And yeah, they broke the website where he asks for donos. And I was already expecting this, but this is much bigger than his mugshot day. And I see images like this, AI generated, shirtless Trump strutting around the prison yard with tattoos. J. Dig says maybe it'll be another rung on Boeing's ruin if they crash into the ISS and bring them both down on Seattle. That's actually what I'm hoping for. Specifically that. But I don't know if they can do that unless. See, I think that Tom Cruise is a huge part of this. Like, he's got to go to space. They can't bring down the ISS. And they can't put him up on the Chinese space station if the ISS goes down. It just looks too fake. I think I've commented on this before that if you ordered the ISS, like I want a space station, and you order it from Wish, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get what looks like, and the Chinese space station looks like, I don't know, it looks like somebody made it in their garage. It's very boxy. It's one of the least convincing sets I've seen. Okay, let's see. And look, I've talked about this before. I also like the idea here of the dragon. You know, Elon Musk, the dragon, and then the dragon goofs up, knocks the ISS sideways, and then drags down 33% of the satellites. So all these satellites rain down from the sky, like a major disaster. And I thought that would be biblical, like Revelation about the dragon's tail dragging down a third of the angels. I mean, however this happens, the ISS disaster has been forecast. We've talked about this before. Not a coincidence that the movie ISS was released on January 19th, and there was not one loose hair. And I watched it for this very purpose. I said, look, we're going to compare the hair on the ISS in the movie to the quote real ISS quote. And sure enough, NASA was listening. They called Hollywood and they said, hey, no loose hairs in this movie. We don't want to make IPS's job easier for them. And they made sure that every single character had the hair tied back. So we weren't able to juxtapose the two because it would have given away one of the major clues to how hoaxy, laughably hoaxy it is. It's such a clown show. I call it a blooper reel, but it's really a clown show. It's a reality TV show pretending to be a space. It's like that 10-day hoax, Space Cadet. It was an actual TV show where they hoaxed people into thinking they were in orbit. And what they've done with the ISS is they've hoaxed the world into thinking they are in orbit. And it's been going on forever. They've turned us into space cadets. And the whole point of the movie was that these people were dupes, that they were space cadets, empty heads, dupes that were unaware, like Truman in the Truman Show, fools, in other words. And they cried when they found out it was a hoax, and the audience laughed. And I'm like, you know what? You're laughing at them, and then another layer up, the elite are laughing at you, because the spaceship Earth is no different than the fake spaceship that this crew thought they were on. It's such a great example of how this thing works. They describe it as an immersive illusion. In fact, the articles I was reading about Space Cadet, or where I actually got that term from, immersive illusion, and the idea was just about how if you're in a self-reinforcing echo chamber, it makes it easy to believe, and many of the actors who were there to prevent the fools from realizing it was a hoax, they found that if they could convince themselves to believe it, they could act like it was real and convincingly pass it off, but they had to trick themselves. And so the idea of tricking themselves into believing is kind of an integral part of this, like method acting and LARPing, live action role playing. I mean, we're in a society of LARPers. Okay, let's continue here. JT says the ISS never had a problem. And in the movie they do. It's Russians and Americans fighting. Maybe the Americans are tired of drinking recycled cosmonaut urine, which is the truth. Cosmonauts get water straight from a glacier, and then the astronauts, the Americans, get whatever's recycled. And they have a fight in space. And again, no loose hairs, no hair got pulled. They really were, look, I think they were listening to us when they made this movie to make sure that they didn't give us any good talking points. In fact, they even dumbed down the way people float. Like you've all seen Gravity with Sandra Bullock. We know how they can show somebody floating through space convincingly. Well, in this movie, they made it clumsy. Like you could tell, oh, that actor's on a harness. Like you could tell. And I'm like, why are they making it obvious that they're faking zero G in a science fiction movie when we've already crossed that line years ago when it comes to faking space? Well, they dumbed down how the astronauts floated around so we couldn't draw a comparison to the ISS and say, hey, wait a minute here. How come the ISS looks, compared to the movie, faker? Why does real look faker than fake? You see, it's a conundrum, and it would be a paradigm shock for people to have this comparison made, so they were careful not to cross these lines. But anyway, we'll get back to that because I do believe it's an important incoming psyop. I think it's actually part of a series that's contiguous: the Titanic sinking, Twin Towers sinking, ISS falling. These are all representative of the Tower of Babel, the West, too big to fail, man's hubris, it all falling down, sinking, and the ISS is like the capstone event, in my opinion. And I have a lot of reasons for making these correlations, which we'll get into in due time. I want to catch up on what's happening right now. By the way, I have made my intentions, I've made my availability out there known to those who are arranging to send somebody to Antarctica to observe a 24-hour sun. So I will make that trip if no one else volunteers. Elephant Tusk says, in my reality, it was always bullocks. Yeah, I know, I'm so ready to debate the Mandela effect. I think it needs to happen. And to me, it's not really a matter of being right or debunking something that people really believe to be true for any other reason than we're all trying to arrive at truth. And if my mind was twisted into knots and I was made to believe something false, I would appreciate somebody offering some clarity. And I think that the Mandela Effect documentary that we've been developing needs to happen because people need to understand how their minds can get tied into knots. It's not about being told, hey, this is true, this isn't true. It's about here's how you can be convinced to accept a false premise. So it's a very sneaky trick, and I think when you unravel that, when you unravel the Mandela effect, you can unravel the mass media when it uses the same types of logical fallacies and various other contrivances when it comes to getting somebody to accept something as real without evidence. Okay, let's continue here, going through comments. Joined by Mick J. Dub Power. Thank you for joining. Yeah, it's a late night again. I just held off today until we can get most of the news out of the way and just see if there's any big developments. So, a couple of things. This was found by Violet. Trump found guilty of 34 counts of falsifying business records, and we all know 34 is the new 33. 33 was too conspicuous. We were calling it out too often, and so now whenever I called this out in 2021. Quarantine the 33-year-olds, and we'll have a year of peace. They wouldn't listen, and on the 6th, a 33-year-old, the QAnon shaman, almost killed democracy. Like we consistently see these patterns, and we notice it. We call it out. How many rounds did Frank James fire into the subway? And on and on. The CEO of Boeing, I think, just got a $33 million separation pay check. And I'm like, wait, we're calling it out so often that now on some of these more blatant ones, they're just moving it up one. So 34 is the new 33. But anyway, here's what was noted. The jury sent a note that 4:20 p.m. At 4:20 p.m., they sent their note to the court asking for half an hour to fill out the forms. So in other words, 4:20 was just noted here, and we've been talking about the significance of 42 as it relates to Trump which we'll continue to get into, but more of this. Tucker Carlson says, import the third world, become the third world. That's what we just saw. This won't stop Trump. He'll win the election if he's not killed. Okay, well, if he's not killed, right. More of that. Then we have, I haven't watched it, but Don Jr. uploaded a 17-second TikTok, and he tells the camera, stay tuned, it's going to be a doozy. Now, I haven't watched it yet, but the fact that it's 17 seconds cannot be a coincidence. Don Jr. is very well known for using QAnon dog whistles. He did this on January 6th at the Ellipse, where he said something with 17. I noted it at the time, but just pointing it out that these individuals are all part of this psyop of dog whistling to their extremist base, the fanatics who worship Trump. But anyway, let me play this clip. This is Don Jr.
President, we're cranking out a couple mean tweets at the courthouse. Why don't you read that last one, because I think it's pretty epic.
I think I'm going to put it out instead of reading it, but I know my son's doing very well on social media. I'm proud of him.
Stay tuned. It'll be a doozy.
All right, stay tuned. It'll be a doozy. It wasn't as cringe or awkward as the Daily Beast suggested. I mean, they have Trump derangement syndrome, I have to say. They're ripping on Trump because he's got Lay's potato chips and M&Ms. Okay, continuing, going through here. Drudge Report gloatingly. Oh, look, Judgment Day. Again, Judgment Day is a connection that we've been talking about. It has to do with Terminator 2. So last night we were talking about T2, the symbol of Saturn, Judgment Day, Second Coming, and all these related symbols that have been following Trump. They've been building up, and of course, James Cameron, of course, can't be separate from 9/11 because he did the Titanic, which has 9/11 predictive programming, as does the Terminator movie. And on 9/11, he was at the site of the sunken Titanic, which again has the same meaning as the sunken Twin Towers. So it's highly significant. He was in the Challenger capsule. So the Challenger that shuts down or sinks the Titanic. This is kind of the symbol that's been building up. So Trump is a bad dawn in the abyss. He is the Apollyon, and his Apollo worship is pretty well established, but the Apollyon stuff is very significant. And then of course you have the translation to exterminator, which is where Terminator comes from. All this is very significant. Recently I mentioned the Ground Zero 9/11 videos that show the Terminator, Arnie, Arnold Schwarzenegger's face looking over Ground Zero, looking over 9/11. It's very deep when you get into the Metascript and how they code these stories, but they encode all this meaning into it intentionally. We've discussed this stuff ad nauseum, but I'm just pointing out here, Judgment Day. Guilty, 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 and scrolling down, guilty, 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 17 rows of guilty, guilty. So Drudge Report gloating over this. Impressive. All right, continuing here. 3 up, 3 down says Elizabeth Christ. We need to look into her more. Oh yeah, her death day, 6666. Very interesting. And Trump is also represented in the character of Damien Thorn. DT, Donald Trump, Damien Thorn. Damien Thorn from The Omen. Lots of Trump stuff there. I'm seeing some interesting comments that I don't care to read, but I appreciate them nonetheless. Live updates, Trump guilty on all counts in hush money case. Now, the breadcrumbs here for the QAnoners is that the storm is coming, Q drop 55, and then we're making all these connections that, go back years, but here Stormy Daniels is the basis for this. I mean, how ridiculous. This guy attempted a coup, and he's going to jail over hush money over a porn star, which is an absurd story in itself. It's not like any of his voters would have cared. Okay, looks like bots have overtaken the chat. Hopefully you can regain control here. Okay, prepare bombshell claim. raw story. There are predictions. Apparently, someone has tape from The Apprentice of Trump using racial slurs, which they're preparing to drop. And the concern here isn't that it's simply offensive. The concern is that it's not going to affect his popularity, but it's going to greenlight the use of ethnic slurs. Trump on tape using the N-word will only make him more popular with his base, replied ex-user Darren Kaplan. Prepare for that word, along with every other ethnic slur, to return to common usage, as white Americans refuse to be censored by the woke mob. Okay, again, it's about to drop. Trump is about to drop an N-bomb on the world. We'll hear about this soon. And they're probably right. Nobody's going to care. Okay, continuing here. Yes, someone had mentioned this yesterday. Let's a couple more things. We mentioned De Niro and his presence there, all part of the theater. His significance here is simply that he was in the Joker movie and he gets shot. And the Joker movie is based on Taxi Driver. Taxi Driver inspired John Hinckley to shoot Reagan. So you see the connections. De Niro hates Trump. De Niro is gonna shoot somebody. The movie inspires a would-be assassin who has JFK's birthday a couple days ago, 5/29. And so the Joker Batman connection here has already been established. But now we have the De Niro being brought into it as Trump's antagonist, representing, of course, himself as the Travis Bickle psycho. Very interesting connection, not a coincidence. And this is again against the backdrop of endless celebrities and alt-right personalities suggesting that Trump's about to be JFK'd. I think Cernovich is in on it too. We'll get to this. Is he still wearing a mask? I mean, he was one of the first ones to adopt it. Anyway, De Niro did play as the young Don Corleone in Godfather Part 2. So there's that a bad Don script as well. And he said that Trump would destroy government. And someone had connected this to the destroyer, Oppenheimer, the destroyer of worlds. And the destroyer is another name of Apollyon, the destroyer in the abyss, a bad Don. Again, a bad Don, a Baden. It's a bad pun. I didn't write it, but this is their Metascript. They will use these words that have multiple meanings, anagrams, ambigrams, any way that they can convey these messages, as Aleister Crowley wrote. Backmasking is a thing. De Niro had two dudes from J6 with him. We saw that. And yeah, and this is from Do You Think? In a Taxi Driver, he was going to shoot someone being elected. Okay, let's see what we have here. Catching up on comments, Elephant Tusk says, CNN reported that Trump and his lawyer were eating pizza right before the verdict. What does that even mean? I mean, there was a point like where pizza and hot dogs were off limits because it was all code. But it's only code if Democrats do it. If Democrats eat pizza, it's code for eating children. But when Trump does it, no, it's cool. Tucker Carlson alludes that the U.S. government entered into an agreement with demons. We talked about this yesterday. But the aversion that the far right has towards AI, this phobia, it's beyond technophobia. It's not just neo-Luddites, because they avail themselves of all the technology. But they're specifically afraid of AI. And they're specifically afraid of aliens now. These things are demonic. Okay, somebody says too many mods spoil the broth. Is there somebody that needs to lose their wrench? Hit me up. If they don't auto hoax, they can show themselves the GTFO. Not a problem. Leo Frigg says, didn't Tucker say he doesn't know anything about Flat Earth, but somehow knows a lot about super secret spiritual demon aliens? Yeah, and he won't tell us what he knows. The world's not ready for it. Like, why is he still gatekeeping? He's taken upon himself to be a gatekeeper on this specific topic. He said, I can't even tell my wife about it. It's like, you're our guy. You were with the establishment. Now you're one of us. You're not a fake populist because you're talking about aliens, but you're still going to hold back. John Francis says, I've been here for 3 years. I am no troll. No, you've earned your wrench. You're not a troll. And, well, I mean, when it comes down to it, though, trolling is something you do. It's not something you are. I've met many reformed trolls who, became active and contributing members of our community. All right, let's see here. In fact, recently one of our favorite former trolls called in. All right, let's see here. Phones are open. If you want to call in, it is 563-999-3664. And we've never been afraid of trolls. And by the way, if you're looking at the screen, you see a penguin with a wrench with the blue flame on it. It says Infinite Plane Society. The significance of it simply is this. The wrench, the moderators here, are a fixture. We started this channel on the basis that we needed to start filtering out trolls or people who aren't up to speed, people who had agendas, because we wanted to have our conversation advance, evolve, and develop, to move somewhere, to arrive at conclusions. So what we did is we instituted the all mod policy for people who made the cut. So if you knew that nobody died at fill in the blank, if you knew that it's probably not a spinning ball, if you knew that agnosticism was sensible, you got a wrench. If you didn't, if you had an agenda, if you were pushing any kind of political party, or a lot of Hitler fans, religious ideologies, or even flat earth models like Bible earthers, we would just ban them. And what happened is we kind of filtered out unproductive talk. It's what happened is we had more signal to noise. We really did fix things on YouTube, but it took a whole phalanx of wrenches. We had walls, we had a fence of blue wrenches, and we had this kind of now it's not an echo chamber. It's a think tank. There's a difference, because we're always receptive to new information. We're not closing ourselves off from new information. But we just insisted on, a higher caliber of truther, you could say. Okay, let's see. Ollie Goering says, I hope Lynn calls in. Oh, sure. I mean, a lot of people are probably listening right now who need to hear about some stuff about the state of the world from her perspective, and I'd be willing to debate on any of these points we disagree on. I mean, Lynn and I agree on a lot of things, but I think one of the fundamental things we don't agree upon is the emphasis that I place on the fakery. And I understand where people are coming from when they don't see it, but some people think, or their position is, that fakery is a tactic, but things are real, or things will get real, or that this is making things worse in some way. And I understand that, because we're talking about psychological warfare, what has all the characteristics of a, benevolent dictatorship, but some sort of mind control operation. How can it be good? How can you not just assume nefarious intentions? But I think that the focus on what might happen, what might be real, what might be harmful, what might be deadly, I think these hypotheticals are all hyperstitions. I think these are evidences of the ammunition, I'll say. This is the ammunition of mind war. It's proof that there is a mind war happening. It's the idea that you're always in a state of agitation. You always think that something bad's about to happen, and it keeps you in a state, I think, of fight or flight. And I've rejected that, and I'm like, no, I'm not a prepper. I don't believe that things are about to go kinetic or get worse. I don't think that we need to prosecute who did 9/11, because nobody knows that 9/11 isn't what people were taught, because it's not as advertised. Nothing, as you all know, on mass media is as advertised. But I'm saying that our reality has been hijacked, and it's been merged with a sim. And these events are simulated. They're movies. We have a movie augmented reality. And so my priority is on looking at the architecture of this thing, the monolithic nature of it, and not treating any of their agenda as anything more than mind war, whether it's this fake depopulation or chemtrails or any of these other truth or orthodoxies. So people will disagree with me over truth or orthodoxies, and I think these are things we need to debate. Pete Tripa says, just realized there's multiple chats. Yeah, you know what? I inadvertently opened up an extra YouTube channel. Didn't mean to, but no big deal. The Infinite Plane Radio channel auto exports to BitChute, so it saved me some time. J Dig says, food is pretty damn expensive. Right. Well, it beats foraging. Okay, I see some interesting comments in the chat. If anyone wants to call in, look, if you have something to say to somebody, just call in and say it. You know, and I think we need to be this is what I'm about here, is accountability. You know, I'm not here to do anything more than add clarity to the arguments and claims that are made, and even my own. Like, please prove me wrong, convince me of any of these things that I'm attempting to debunk, and I will adjust accordingly. I'm very interested in being proven wrong on any of these things. In fact, you know, today I went to the planetarium. Did I walk out of it convinced that we're on a globe? No. But I did walk out of it with a better idea of how to locate Virgo and Gemini. And then also I've been looking at that Chelus-looking constellation, which is like this cup of Apollo next to a raven. But anyway, I was checking out the planetarium and the fake dinosaurs. I mean, the dinosaur exhibits are not as impressive to me as they were when I was a kid, when I thought these were real bones that somebody dug up. Like, you're digging on a playground and maybe you'll find a bone and there's a dinosaur there. No, it's never the case. These have always been plaster molds made in China or something. But I was at the dino factory. They have this setup where you can look at these people in the back who are cleaning what looks to be dinosaur bones with like little picks. You can watch where the sausage is made. It's all theater. I'm just saying, it's theater. It's lying. You know, it's lying to people. It's pretty bad. Okay, let's see. Going through your comments. Ollie Goering says foraging is fun. Yeah, well, yeah, on this topic here, someone keeps talking about cheese puffs. I don't know where we're going with this. I think we kind of went off the rails. Let's get back to talking about Donald Trump's reality TV show. That's really what this has become. He's hijacked the media. And who knows how much money. He made, what, $5 million off his mugshot? How much is he going to make off this? And how far can you stretch this comparison to Jesus? Did Jesus rake in millions of dollars? There's a pattern here, and it's the media being played. I think Ann Coulter recently just posted something that they just handed him the victory. And absolutely. Wayne Dion posted this. The site crashed. Too many MAGAs. Biden team takes aim at Trump after guilty verdict. Takes aim. Again, takes aim is another example. We're noticing this stuff. Laura Loomer is pretty blunt. They're going to try to assassinate Donald Trump after they see tonight how much support he gets after his guilty verdict. And a lot of people are donating, I believe, $34. Real Kim Shady, arrested, tried, convicted. We know what comes next. 10 reasons the trial of Jesus was illegal. Donald Trump shared this. He said, they only brought this fake, corrupt, and disgraceful charge against me because I stand with the American people, and they know that I cannot get a fair trial in New York. And then here's an article by Harold Rhodes that says, the trial of Jesus was illegal in many ways. He was fraudulently convicted. Here are 10 reasons Jesus' arrest, trials, and convictions were illegal. So again, blatant comparison. Ollie Goering says, sorry, Tim. No, if you're off the rails, that's fine. I'll catch up. We started late, and I didn't have any specific agenda. I did have some notes here. For example, don't miss the mind war for the PSYOP. Okay, so there's this tendency for people to look at these rabbit trails that never lead anywhere, or seemingly don't, and suggest, well, maybe there's no point to noticing this stuff. maybe it doesn't mean anything. And I think what I wanted to point out, and we talked about this in our chat, is that it's not really about the rabbit trails and the hyperstitions they create, because a lot of these things are part of, I think, active measures. These are part of what we do refer to here as the sea of irrelevance. But yeah, there are many things that are distractions. But I think we can't lose sight of the fact that they are trying to distract you, that they are leading people, that there is an active and ongoing effort to control minds. That's what we're pointing out. The monolithic nature of this mind control apparatus that merges uh, government, media, entertainment, all into this immersive illusion that we call the world stage here, but this consensus agreed upon version of things. And the fact that we're able to see evidences of pre-scripting, planning, news bending, that's the main thing to focus on. Like the architecture of it, the fact that it's a magic show. We don't have to worry about every little trick, but rather focus on the fact it's a magic show and not lose sight of that. So let me go through something here. I had some notes on my Discord server. The long and short of it is that when I say media is not what people think, it's not just the news, it's the entertainment. And we do have to pay attention specifically to the symbolism and the nuance, because we're seeing the bones of this creature. We're seeing the architecture again, and it's monolithic. I use that word for a reason. They got the world to agree to a monolithic vision. That's what the space program is largely about. A space is just metaphor for inner space, your mind, your worldview control, and they got it. So it's nearly impossible to overstate the significance of the fact that they have, in fact, hijacked and created a hive mind, in a sense. They've hijacked the worldview. They have become the arbiters of reality for billions. I mean, it's a remarkable thing. It's a great accomplishment. I think it is the Tower of Babel in many ways. The Tower of Babel is the mass agreed upon collective illusion to sight leave the world behind, but as Napoleon said, history is lies agreed upon. Well, I think you could say the same of media. Media is lies agreed upon. Ollie Goering says, the verdict feels sort of anticlimactic. Am I the only one that feels that way? Not very exciting. Well, I once said that we're not paranoid conspiracy theorists, but we're jaded media critics. If you were still a conspiracy theorist, like a QAnoner, a full-blown QAnoner MAGA, this would not be anticlimactic. You would be raging at the system, but you'd be happy that you have proof that he's being persecuted. Like, you would be completely invigorated right now. But you're not, because you're a jaded media critic. You're no longer a triggerable, paranoid conspiracy theorist. So that's actually a good place to be. Peace of mind. It's kind of, and I don't think it's boring, but in a way it's kind of academic ivory tower. That's why we're not activists. We're not running for the hills. And this makes people mad. You see, the truthers get mad because normies can't wake up. But they also get mad at us because we're awake, but we're not agitated. And that's because, again, we're not truthers. We went further than that. Okay, let's see what else I have here. One other point in my notes here, because we're talking about rabbit trails and all these unsolvables and the thing. We have to keep in mind that we're learning and we're expanding our understanding. Last year, I didn't know how to explain the way that people with gematria calculators were able to consistently prove themselves right, to where they could make huge livings off of it on Patreon. And I have no misgivings for that. I mean, if you can sell Mandela effects, by all means, capitalism can be a good thing, I guess. If you can sell sports predictions based on gematria, go for it. But, last year, I was unaware of how these things worked. And then as we got closer to the Super Bowl, I became sort of annoyed at these people who were making false predictions. And it really reached a crescendo with the eclipse on 4/8. I was like, if they don't demonstrate some kind of prophetic ability beyond just making themselves look right, then there's got to be some kind of a scam here. Turns out it's called the Texas sharpshooter fallacy. And so you can reverse engineer a lot of these scams, a lot of these grifts. So I think it's worth noting that as we proceed, I think we are improving our methodologies here. We're becoming more savvy of the various tricks. And it's not just truthers that may use tricks to make their points or to make their claims. The mass media uses the same tricks. That's why these are worth pointing out. When I say this is mind war inoculation, well, the mind war is not just coming from mainstream. It's coming from alt. In fact, I think the alt gives you heavier dosages. That's why they become paranoid. Lean Dion says, lots of MAGAs think that Dems getting Trump out of the way to start World War III with more weapons to Ukraine must be a tortured life, mentally believing it all. Sure, stress, not to mention, I suppose, the alienation you get for taking an extremist view, which does have ramifications. Being alienated, becoming lonely. Loneliness is a very, I think it's kind of one of these things that you can add in with psychosomatics and the nocebo effect and stress itself. All these things can only make life worse. And that's why I'm making the point about peace of mind, about leaning towards becoming jaded rather than paranoid. Because the original concept of skepticism, as defined by Piro, was suspension of judgment, and that suspending judgment on what you can't prove until you get more evidence will leave you believing less, more sure of what you know, but without baggage. And without baggage, you reach a state which they called ataraxia, or peace of mind, quiescence. And when it comes to the world stage, the world itself, I'm not experiencing any cognitive dissonance. I have quite the opposite. I used the phrase cognitive harmony quite some time ago, I think when I first unplugged from it as some kind of a worldview filter for me. It was like leaving a religion. All right, we're joined by Eunice in Gangbang, Uncool Ben, Mark Johnson, hello. Late evening, now it's 5:31, but I'm going to archive this as 5:30. Phones are open if you want to talk about anything, 563-999-3664. I keep putting out notices. I've thrown down the gauntlet. If you want to debate me on chemtrails, we're going to do that soon, hopefully. Billy Blog says, what is this? You're listening to Infinite Plane Radio, and all we're doing is we're discussing the fake news from an informed perspective. Most news consumers don't know what they're consuming. Entertainment is propaganda. The fact that you're amused by it is just because they put something in the poison to make it go down easier. But it's all propaganda, and I think our main point here, if I had to encapsulate it in a couple of sentences, is that we are informed disbelievers in mainstream media narratives, as opposed to the masses who are low information believers. And my contention is that the informed non-believer is more reasonable than the low information believer, who are essentially like religious fanatics these days. I mean, they're bonkers. You look at these politicos on X, it's a cult. They worship their politicians. Uncle Ben says, you're lucky to have come across this channel, mate. You know, I had this in my notes, actually, at the very top. Paradigm shock to the system. You know, people want to know what our intentions are ultimately here. That's it. Paradigm shock to the system. We have to Oppenheimer this place, figuratively speaking. And even if I was being literal and I said I'm going to nuke everything, nukes are fake. It doesn't mean anything coming from me. So the DHS doesn't need to come knocking on my door. But figuratively speaking, we need to Oppenheimer the world stage. And what this means is what we are presenting here, this level of skepticism properly directed, will only be intelligible to a certain number of people who are willing to consider it or who even care. It's even in their purview or interests. But if we detonate it bigly enough, we might amass a sizable parallel media, something outside of the controlled opposition alternatives. And that's the objective. We want to onboard 10 to 100,000 people in the next 3 or 4 months. And there's nothing to stop it, because the fact of it is we're right. And I don't lose sight of that. I don't lose sight of the fact that we're correct in our assessment, and that we exist in a world of people who have been deluded with hyperstitions, who live in a augmented virtual reality, a paradigm shaped for them by a power elite who have everything to gain from keeping them visually illiterate, incapable of determining real from fake, and unaware of how saturated they are with propaganda. I mean, predictive programming is commented on by truthers here and there, but they have no clue what it means. They think it's just coincidences. Oh, we're noticing coincidences. And they feel empowered by this knowledge. Well, these aren't coincidences. It's the standard operating procedure. Our news is what becomes history over time. The power elite write our history. Well, they write our history day by day as they implement it on the world stage as news. So they monopolize news media, and they convey the news. There's a media monopoly, no doubt about it. It maintains a cohesive world view. But beyond that, now that they have the monopoly, it gives them creative control. They create a closed system of ideas where they can introduce hyperstitions, where they can introduce, through psychological operations, things that aren't real, but become real through the power of mass belief. It's like a magic show. Okay, going through some comments here. By the way, go to ips.monster if you want to check out the channel and our archives. I'm going to reinstitute the IPR 24/7. So the 24/7 live stream is something that I maintained for years on end, and it got disrupted last year, but I think that it's a huge part of what makes this thing work, and it was always meant to be a fixture. I never meant to let it get shut down, so we're going to have to turn that back on. Mark Johnson says, the lawmakers seem to be working overtime. Well, when it comes to this, politics, and this is a great year to do what we're doing. What we're doing here is we are diverging. I'm not here to regurgitate mainstream news or combat alternative media at all. We're splintering off. And while everyone is distracted, following their Pied Piper, whichever one you choose, when everyone's investing all their loosh into the political circus, we're going to be diverging. We're going to be driving the wedge deeper, create this schism, breaking off a sizable chunk of Trutherville and amassing the base of what will be considered what I call the parallel media. And this is the time to do it. Between now and the election, I think this is a golden opportunity. Mark Foley says, I'm flying back to Seattle on 6/11. Do you think I'll get a good view of the end of the world? Perhaps Alaska Airlines will be serving popcorn that day. I would go out there myself. In fact, if there's any possibility I can make it there, I will. But you'll have to see it. You'll have to be looking at your screen. I don't know how they can fake it 100%. I've been thinking about it quite a lot, and there's an element here of stage magic that we also have to keep in mind. Like what is possible within the scale. Like, yeah, they can pull off a 9/11. We're talking about creating a movie set out of a big chunk of a major city. So whatever they're going to do in Seattle, I think it's going to be very convincing. And again, it's going to be Christopher Nolan who's going to get credit for it. But I'm looking forward to it. If you're there, they could easily fake EMP. Even if nukes are fake, it doesn't mean they can't simulate the entire thing. And we've been waiting for this blackout for some time. Do you remember Cyber Polygon? They're having this tabletop exercise at the WEF to rehearse in case some kind of emergency happens and everything gets scrambled and shut down. And they canceled it. But on the day that Cyber Polygon was intended to go on, there were all kinds of disruptions and shutdowns across Canada. The drill went live. Infinite Plane Radio. Hey, what's up, caller?
Hey, Tim.
What's on your mind with
You
Don?
spoke of the monolith.
Yes, the monolith, major symbol here. What's your thoughts on it?
It is actually quite symbolic of an algorithm. See, algorithms don't have a face, no feature. The monolith had no features. And a little known fact about it, or a little discussed fact, is that the ratio, its proportions, were 1 by 4 by 9, which was an encoding of the squares of the first 3 natural numbers. That's an algorithm.
Okay, I didn't know that. I mean, I had heard somewhere that the
Well, it's very important because AI is governed entirely by algorithms.
well, if you remember, the
Very
2000,
important.
2001 Space Odyssey had the Hell 9000 to symbolize AI, and then it's all about the monolith.
There it is.
And then some have suggested that the monolith represents the movie screen in its proportions.
Well then, that's the whole point. That's the whole point. It's the same thing because that's the vehicle. It's bang on. Quite right.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this
Absolutely. Now, there's more to it. You see, the very word monolith, mono is one, right? Do you remember what happened in 2010, the sequel?
No, would you inform me on this because I haven't watched it yet. I'm putting that down in my notes. What happened
Very
in the
important. Ready? It's very important. Jupiter ended up going, what was it called? It achieved the Chandrasekhar limit, and that's the mass that's required for a celestial body to become a black hole or to collapse on itself. It's basically ready, and it was accomplished by countless numbers of monoliths that all accreted around Jupiter and ended up plunging into it. Almost like that comet Shoemaker-Levy striking. Do you remember that in the news a long time ago? Shoemaker-Levy plunged into Jupiter.
Oh, that's right. Okay. So this
And
is
there was mass speculation on what all the added mass was going to do, and it played exactly on that idea of Jupiter's mass going critical and causing this implosion event where a second star was born. That's what resulted from it.
fascinating.
Which has got a parallel. Yeah, it's got a parallel in the first because what happened was David Bowman became a star child, and then in the sequel here, the star is born.
Gotcha.
It's like double. Yeah, so it's and you got to remember that Kubrick, with eyes wide shut, you know what he's talking about? He's talking about lucid hypnosis.
Ooh, interesting. Okay, I've been saying that the Eyes Wide Shut references your subconscious mind that doesn't speak, doesn't have an ego, a voice, but it's just always receptive like eyes are to all of the programming, and thus the masks.
Yeah, that's the virtual retina. That's the virtual retina. The screen, the monolith, right there. The monolith is a external projection of an internal reality of our perception. That's exactly right.
You know, interestingly, the phone is a monolith. You got your iPhone and the camera lens, which is Siri.
You're seeing the universality of it. You've just seen them all. You've just seen the monolith go poly monolith.
Well, Siri backwards is iris. So you got the retina, the iris, eye, and iPhone. But
it's an inescapable. It's an inescapable self-referential loop.
Now, you mentioned the word monolith, so I refer to this thing, the world media construct, the one world religion, a one world view, as the new monotheism, and thus the monolith is such an important symbol.
Well, that was the whole space. That's what the whole Apollo mission was about. One world view.
Yeah, exactly, precisely. Exactly.
And Kubrick.
Yep.
And Kubrick shot that film. It was 2001 by day, hoaxed landing by night. Same set pieces.
Yes. And there are fascinating connections. I got this article by this website called Chartword, and he makes these great comparisons, and he shows you've got the black monolith on the moon with this. It looks like an excavation site, and it looks exactly like Ground Zero, where overlooking Ground Zero is the monolith Hilton Hotel. So you quite literally have a.
That is 100%. 100%. That is a 100% bang-on correlation to every detail. Yeah.
Yep.
That's the mimetic. That's the mimetic equivalent.
And then it gets more. You look at the Hilton
mimetic.
logo. The Hilton logo. Speaking of mimetic, it's an H with this swirl on it, but it looks like twin towers with the flight patterns of the two planes going into it.
Yes, absolutely. Because repetition is key in all propaganda, right? It doesn't matter what form the communication takes place in. That's the difference between semiotics and lexicology. See, lexicology is what AI is based on. It's all about word association frequency and the context in which words are used. But semiotics is about the kernel of meaning in any communication, words, and even the realm beyond words, symbols, and everything else, right? That's semiotics.
Okay.
The meaning, the kernel of meaning, right? Semiotics is vital for understanding. And AI has no concept of semiotics.
Well,
it's a lexicological construct. That's what the algorithm is.
Well, what they have done with this...
Very important distinction.
Well, the monolith symbols really stood out to me because 2001 to me looks like merging, two into one, symbolized also by the eclipse, sun and moon. So I take, in a Jungian sense, the moon is the subconscious, the sun is the conscious mind, the merging of the two, shining light in the darkness of the subconscious, this alchemical concept. But I think in a more literal sense, it represents the merging of our dream world, i.e. the movies, with reality, the news.
Yes.
Two into one. And 9/11 was a perfect example.
That's the vehicle. Yes. Because that's the vehicle to apotheosis. That's the proposed vehicle to apotheosis. We achieve godhood the moment we take David Bowman's journey.
Merging with the monolith, becoming one with the hive. Yep, and we've all merged. We're merging with our iPhones.
That's the pitch.
I think we are living
That's the pitch, and that's the pitch black.
Okay, the space odyssey, the journey into the space age. I think we're in the space age, and I think space is, of course, a metaphor for the inner space that they control, and we're in the age where they control our minds. Like, this is the space age. They've merged us with a false paradigm.
Yeah, it's the cosmic reflection, microcosm, macrocosm. It's the cosmic reflection, yes.
Fascinating.
It might interest you to know, okay, maybe I should...
Go ahead.
Go on.
Well, I was going to say, you mentioned David Bowman.
Well, I just figured that...
And I was going to say, David Bowman has a corresponding character in the entertainment world with David Bowie. And David Bowie, the space oddity, and his whole musical career.
That's no accident.
He has a parallel.
That's no accident.
Not at all. I think that he's an archetype they put out there of a space person coming down to Earth to give us... It's not an accident, as you say.
Yeah, that's mass dissemination with pop culture. There's no better way to do it. And with rock and roll music, because that music is trance-inducing, right?
Yeah.
Colored lights.
The trance.
It's all by design. There's no mistake about it, man. There's no mistake about it, Tim. Listen, you're all over this, and I'll tell you the reason why you're all over it is because you refuse, you won't allow yourself to fall for a logical fallacy. That's your ultimate. That's your method. You are not going to plunge yourself into a logical fallacy because if we commit one from the get-go, every subsequent deduction is going to be flawed, right?
Precisely. And my contention here is that the mass media puts everyone into a subjective world of beliefs. So you have belief systems versus belief systems, and I want to opt out of being a believer. In the age of information, we should be able to know what is knowable and then know what we... we're falling for false explanations in so many different things because of habit or lack of research. But
yes.
Yeah, I'm not going to fall for any false belief. And I recognize by going through these things...
Well, but it's a simple premise, Tim, right?
Uh-huh.
Only a fool judges a matter. Only a fool judges a matter before consideration. That's all that is, right? Because that's what you're talking about. It's the same thing. The principle is identical, right? You don't just accept it, for what it is without examining it. Because a fool's going to make a decision one of two ways, and that's the technique of infamy that Ezra Pound speaks of in Culture, in his work Culture. It's the technique of infamy is to invent two lies at once and have people argue heatedly over which one is true.
Ooh, that's great.
And there you go, right?
I used to think that the political horseshoe was a cliche, just a theory, but now I think they actually designed the world stage with the political horseshoe.
It's methodology.
Yep.
It's pure methodology.
So you're fighting
Pure
mainstream
methodology. Now,
and alt, and it's like neither side is speaking from a place of objectivity. They both accept certain parameters that we're constantly challenging. So my whole point has been whether you're alt media or mainstream, you're still in this box. You're still in the programmed category. And I'm one step into the deprogrammed.
Yeah. Yeah, now let me tell you why The Matrix was so popular, because, and we're going to use reductio ad absurdum to illustrate the point here. There is no spoon. From that, it stands to reason then there are no real objects. And then it further stands to reason that there is no totalitarian boot stomping on your gullible neck. And then from there, it's the other boots not stomping on your private parts either. See, that all goes, right? Everyone's staring at their navels in their own private cul-de-sac of meaning, and then what really is common to everybody gets trampled.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's incredible. In fact, I'm coincidentally, I found this book, and it just parallels everything I talk about, called In the Country of the Blind. And it's about this secret society that mastered the art of manipulating history and guiding the course of human destiny, and someone finds out about it. But the whole point of it is they wanted to engineer humanity into a new species, a techno-peasant species, where they're so immersed in memes, and meaningless memes in particular, that they never realize that they're being guided by a small cabal. And I'm like, that's pretty fascinating, because
yeah, the ones that really play the memes, the ones who have basically controlling the narrative is basically controlling the meme availability. That's all it is. Meme control. Meme control becomes mind control.
100%. And I made this correlation before that the concept of mind virus was only recently popularized. I mean, it was made exceptionally popular recently by Musk. But the mind virus concept is how they finally defined the thought crime. And now they're working through doing the cyberspace equivalent of a quarantine, and like basically they want us to mask our minds. They're treating mind viruses as a real thing. But interestingly, I think they were able to convince us on the idea that certain ideas themselves are transmissible through years of conditioning. But the person who coined or who wrote the book Virus of the Mind, Richard Brody, designed Microsoft Word. So I'm like, Microsoft Word, Virus of the Mind, and then you got Bill Gates and Microsoft, and you can see how they use this thing as a model to sell us on this other thing. So we've been sold on this new paradigm, which is going to allow them to censor our realities for our own good with our permission.
Okay, you said Microsoft Word. Let me ask you something. Here's a brow-raising question. What makes anyone so certain that from the moment they designed Word that the intention wasn't first and foremost a real convenient way of being able to capture everybody's keystrokes, typing all their private thoughts?
You know, you say that as a hypothetical, but keyloggers are what, as old as keyboard? I mean, those things aren't
well
new.
known. Well, very well known, right? Well, okay, you know what? I think in all fairness, I better let you know a little. I don't want to call it a secret. I'm just going to tell you flat out about myself. You mind if I tell you a bit about myself?
Yeah, please do.
I used to be a senior production editor for Discovery Channel Canada from 1994 until 1998, and then brief freelancing stint in 2004 and 5. I was there when Dolly the Sheep was cloned. I routinely edited NASA feeds. I'm a green screen expert. I'll tell you a little something else. November 22nd, 1997, a very well-known performer was apparently, auto-asphyxiated. You remember his name?
Was it the guy from In Excess?
Australian band.
Was it In Excess?
That's the one.
Yeah, okay. Okay, 11:22.
That's the one, Tim. That's the one. Well, yeah, I'll tell you. I had, on that same night, I had a horrible encounter with well, let's just say an unsavory agent who decided that I was going to become a problem for their ventures. Okay, let me put it another way. You can kind of consider me a Michael Hutchence or a JFK that managed to get away.
Okay. Interesting.
Are you interested?
Yeah, definitely.
Because I can blow the whole the whole CERN thing. I can tell you the entire CERN thing. You want to know what it's about?
Yeah, please, because that's what we're about. We want to open source the.
Well, I'm going to tell you exactly what it's about. Listen, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not exaggerating, Tim, because I think you and I have been talking long enough to know. I know exactly where you're coming from, and I think you're getting an idea of where I'm coming from, right?
Yes.
You see, you have the necessary intellect. Very few people do. You've obviously disciplined your mind sufficiently where you're not succumbing to knee-jerk reactions. Well, that's what NLP is all about. And the thing about NLP is the means by which they value the memes. So basically, all the memes are qualified by the associations that the programmers know the memes have in advance, right?
Yes. I look at this almost like collective MK Ultra, where they can push a button and trigger a specific demographic, and it's really that simple these days.
It's exactly the right thing. It's absolutely 100% the deal. That's right, exactly like that. That's exactly how it's happening. Now, CERN, I'm going to remind you again of the Ezra Pound technique of infamy. What they've done is they've spun two plausible yet false narratives. One, they're searching for this particle they call the Higgs boson, the one that is alleged to give matter its mass. That's the story, right? Again, this has got nothing to do with me. I'm not telling anybody anything that I think. I'm just basically echoing the very things that are going to everybody's ears, right? In all fairness, right?
Right.
Listen, I mean, the ability to listen is the first order of business in proper, effectual, accurate, concise communication.
Yeah, before I did this, I was doing retention for DirecTV. I had to listen to a customer and convince them not to abandon us. So 8 hours a day, always listening for nuance, and that's absolutely a key point was learning how to hit the mute button and let people talk, because it's so easy, especially today. Anyway, but please go on, because you said about the CERN, the two ways, because it's something I talk about a lot, how they present it.
So here's the two stories. I'm going to blow it wide open here, because I'm telling you right now, my story is quite rare, and how I found these things out, and all the things that have happened to me subsequent to 1997. I ended up in a hospital for a month, 3 days in a coma. I'm talking about an experience that cannot be put into words. I'm talking about an intervention. It's probably going to blow your mind. You know where I'm going with this?
Proceed. 3 days in a coma.
Have you ever heard the notion of a walk-in?
Yes. And for those who haven't heard, a walk-in, it's sort of like Agent Smith. You're suggesting something entering into a person while they're vacant.
Very much like that. That's right. You see, I'm going to confess to you that who you're speaking with right now has all the memories of that life. You see, when I said a JFK that got away and is also now able to point the finger at all the rats that conspired, how about that? And their hidden technologies.
So you're saying while you're in a coma, something joined you, or you are, is that what you're saying? Or some part of you woke up that was latent?
Let's put it this way. The being that was responsible for me not dying when I was supposed to eventually made his appearance in my life. And he's not from this realm.
Okay, I find this interesting, and I definitely want to continue down this line. And I want you to get back
Oh, I
also on
know.
CERN.
I know. That's why I'm talking to you. I wanted to talk to you 2 nights ago, and last time you weren't on. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a few days now.
Okay, oh, 'cause
No word of a lie, no exaggeration, Tim.
I often speak at
You
or
need to see.
about
You need to go. You need to go viral. You need to go viral. I'm not saying you should go. I'm saying you need to go viral. You mentioned court of public opinion. Well, then what's the venue going to be, Tim? That's the thing. That's the next thing you got to consider. If you think going into some established court of law here in the land, well, the idea is not bad. Just that I don't think that's the right venue, because unless you've got the public privy to the proceedings, it's to no avail, right?
yeah, and
Am I mistaken?
no, and one of our I think the idea of going viral, I point out here, I kind of target market. This is why I want to do debates. Like I think we would gain more from doing debates topic by topic and then reaching the people who are confused or conflicted or sold on a certain viewpoint and then challenging that. Because
Sure.
because the public attention span is a goldfish attention span. And so I'm looking to uh, paradigm shift rather than gaining momentary attention, which is what virality generally does. But I get your point. Um,
Yes, it's got to be a controlled release.
but to go back to your
Moderated, mediated release. Absolutely right. You're absolutely right,
CERN.
because you don't want to be just the next big virus.
Yeah, exactly. And of
You're
course,
absolutely
I'm
right.
not, and I'm not interested in being defined by the mainstream media. I'm not trying to gain approval and get platformed on any of these big platforms, but rather the parallel media is a construct separate from the controlled dialectic of mainstream and alternative, because they do everything with this what I call bifurcated psy-war. And you were saying about CERN, there are 2 versions of the situation. One of them you said is particle
2 false
accelerator.
narratives. I'm going to prove it. Yes. Here you go. Here you go. Now, here's the key, Tim. The key to going viral in the best way is to focus on an aspect of the alt psyche that you feel, or that we discern, is probably the most pressing thing to get out of the way first. That mystery that bothers us more than some of the other ones do. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. In fact,
Like that Mandela effect
You
thing.
may have expertise in this in particular. So about the CERN and the Mandela effect, that's one area.
Yes, I do. Do I have deep intel on that? I'll tell you,
Yeah,
I got
please.
the deep
What
intel on
do you
that.
have that you can share with us tonight specifically about CERN that we may not know, behind the curtain stuff?
Okay, here we go. Number 1 is the question, and I'll tell you, this is really going to shed light on the whole thing. Because the story is that they were looking for the fabled mass-inducing particle they called the Higgs boson. Well, the announcement was that they found it, right? And that's clear. That's been announced. They found the boson. So they found this long-sought-after mysterious particle, which they say now has them surpassing. They now have gone beyond what they call the standard model of physics. This is what they're saying. So that it begs the question, if they've already now identified this magical fabled, well, I call it fabled because I believe it's a fabled particle. They've found it. They know it exists. It's real. Problem solved. We found the gremlin that gives everything mass, right? Then it begs the question, if that's the case, why is China building a 100-kilometer version of the 27-kilometer CERN construction? If they've already found what they were looking for? It begs the question, doesn't it?
So what do you think the real purpose of
That's
it is
one.
then? What are you asserting here? That
Oh, yes. Well, if you want to get to that, right. Well, first of all, I want to give you the other bogus story, and then we'll get to that. All right.
Okay,
the other
sure.
side of the story, if it's not a research project for a fabled particle, or finding out more about this found fabled particle, maybe whether it likes, I don't know, pizza or lasagna, I don't know. But the other story is it's going to create a black hole, it's going to open portals. Well, again, that's all speculative stuff. And not only that, let me tell you something about black holes. And that brings me to a figure by the name of Walter Wagner. Are you familiar with the name Walter Wagner?
No. Who is Walter Wagner?
In a nutshell, Walter Wagner is this alleged nuclear physicist who tried to have a court injunction filed in the U.S. against CERN's operation. And I can't remember the year, but this is many years ago. This actually was happening before they fired it up for the first time. But he was the guy that made this idea of it generating a black hole dismissible because they said he had no evidence, in which case he doesn't have no evidence. And not only that, it flies in the face of everything we've been taught about what makes the black hole, namely reaching the Chandrasekhar limit for mass. So if the story is that to make a black hole, you need a massive star, that's going to collapse on itself and become the black hole, what makes people think that slamming protons in a 27-kilometer ring is going to achieve black hole Chandrasekhar limit mass? It's stupid now, isn't it?
Yeah.
But now, having said that,
okay, and I had a commenter has a question for you. They were curious about something here. They said,
please do. I'll field any questions.
Okay, let's do this one. He said, what did the caller do with the Discovery Channel regarding NASA fakery?
I was there when they first shuttle united with the space station, the very first docking. I was there for that live, and
any opinion on the Challenger?
You're gonna laugh. Let's have the Challenger. You mean with the disaster where the astronauts weren't on board? You mean?
Okay, just checking. You're good. That's just kind of
you give me any test. You toss any test you want at me. I say I'll take any question. I'll tell you right now. I'm not kidding. No exaggeration. It's not a boast. All right. Listen. I feel this is my obligation now. I'm not. And this, again, no exaggeration. I am compelled and I am obliged because I'm going to tell you now. Here we go. One thing. See, I rejoice that I have this opportunity to speak to someone who's a most fitting recipient. I've been listening to you for a short while now, and I've been listening to your method the whole time. Not the things you're saying, the method you apply was more important than the actual things you say. Right? So now, what you are going to know for certain right off the bat, a principle about all technologies that's a universal truism, and it's this. Every single technology ever known to man has always been scalable, right? Without exception. You take any given technology, it could be applied at many scales, and not only many scales, it can also be applied in multiple contexts, right? Fact. It's an indisputable fact about technology. Now, having said that, let's get back to that structure, that monolithic structure. You were born in the age of the flat screen, right, Tim? You look to be, I guess, late 20s, 30-ish, maybe.
Wait, but sure. I want to stick to this though. We're talking about the space shuttle. Like we are involved. So you're working for the Discovery Channel or something. Does NASA give you content, raw material that you edit, or were you just repeating? Were you just hitting play? Like, did you have any sort of backstage with?
Yes, editor. We basically listen. What they used to do is they used to feed us to our master control because it was a studio up in Scarborough, Toronto area. That's broadcast center in Canada. It basically, and I was there from the network's launch in September of 1994. Prior to that, I was working as a production editor for the Sports Network because they ended up both operating under the same parent company. And so anyhow, I was privy to all the latest stuff in you name it. When they made the first glowing mouse, I was there putting that story to air.
No.
I was on the cutting edge of all science and technology stories.
Okay, so
for 4 straight years until the.
Okay, so you're there, like reporting on stuff cutting edge, but like, I guess what I'm asking here is, would you have had any indication that you were being tricked, or that you were being given propaganda, or that anything was hoaxed, or did everything?
I'm going to confess it.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to confess it. I was as blind and dumb as anything I could have possibly been. I was basically sitting in a death chair the whole time and didn't even know it.
Well, it's not your fault. It's a magic show.
How's that
and
for confession?
it's a magic show, and if you're in the seat that the magician has you in, if you're in the audience, you can't see through the trick. And that's how I look at most of the media fakery, that unless you have another perspective, the default position is to be programmed and fooled. So I was just pointing it out that people say there's no way NASA could fool us because there's so many people involved. It's like, well, they don't realize that there are like firewalls that would prevent people from coming across certain bits of information, and it's so compartmentalized that you
Of course, it's called that's right. It's called compartmentalization. What's called compartmentalization, 100%. Clearance privileges, 100%. Absolutely. That's how it's done. See, because people are mundane people don't understand those things. So it takes a lot of patience, and it's difficult. Because these people claw at you, and that's why you can't tell just anybody. But then that's where it gets to the point where it's probably good to somehow gently nudge their attention to something that maybe is worthy of their attention, if we can only get people to stop looking down at their palms all the time. Because that's what this is about, Tim. This is about not only manipulating people's attention, but knowing how to draw it in the first place.
Yeah, they use the phrase
attention
economy. How often do we hear that? And one of the things that I often talk about here is where the media and propaganda merges with what we generally would term magic, whatever falls under that term. And most of what we term magic.
It is magic.
Now, stage magic or ritual magic both employ what? The focused attention of the participants. It's always about the attention, and it's misdirected. It's tricking your rational mind into believing an illusion. And this is true for high magic and stage magic, or occult ritualistic stuff. My point of it is that it's all about the attention for some reason, for multiple reasons, I'm sure. But yeah, that's the key component. Look at Trump right now. He's the center of attention for the entire world because he was paying hush money to a prostitute. Like, that's power. That's how they wield their power.
Hush money. Now, ready? Let's look at that for a second now. Hush money. Hush. Quiet. Shh. That's the index finger to the lips. That's the Harpocrates. That's their very method. It's the oath of silence. Hush. That's the whole methodology writ large.
Yeah, that's actually
true.
They do it? If you look at Aleister Crowley in any of his ritual garb, I'll put him on the screen right now. They have that sign of silence, and they use it to reference a few things. One of them is the secrecy of the group, but also silencing the ego, silencing the programmed ego, so you can start to develop an awareness of yourself beyond that.
100%. Because compartmentalized intelligence in the institution will lead to compartmentalized intelligence in the individual.
Yes.
It's an inescapable parallel.
Yeah, that's
absolutely
fascinating.
Right, man.
It's fascinating.
I'm basically here to confirm just everything you're saying and then some, because we haven't finished with CERN yet and the technology of scale about what the structure is.
Yeah.
And now let's get I know we're going to digress from time, as long as you're okay with this.
Yeah, let's get back into that, because a lot of people want to hear what you had to say about CERN. And
that's right. Let's not forget that. So I know that's why I need your help with this. All right. I'm not kidding. I need your help with this.
Okay, so why is China building a bigger CERN than what we have?
That's the question. That's the question. Now here's where we go to scales. Let's get back to the tube. You see, you were born in the flat screen generation, so you're not so well accustomed to looking at the old-fashioned color TV tubes that I grew up with, right? Because there's a very important element in the design of a CRT tube. It's called the yoke. You know what the yoke does?
What does it do?
The yoke takes the electron beam that is emitted by the cathode at the back of the TV set, and it basically scans that beam across the phosphors of the screen that we see all the colored show program on. It's an electron. It basically is what steers an electron gun or a directed energy beam. Now, the structure of the yoke is basically a very large ring magnet. It's a very large ring magnet across which the horizontal and vertical timing signals are scanned, and that's what has the electrons zip back and forth across the screen to trace out the picture. But LED and LCD screens, they don't do any such thing, you see. The electrical signal goes right into the substrate and generates the light right there at the face itself, and not from a gun. But now let's look at that yoke again. Here you got this very powerful ring magnet, a ring electromagnet, and it's focusing and directing a high energy beam. Well, let's take that magnet, let's rotate it 90 degrees so now it's looking like a donut on a table or a donut on the face of the earth, and let's make it 27 kilometers in circumference. Seeing it?
Yes. Okay. You're describing CERN, basically.
Yes. It's a huge super electromagnet ring. And if there's ever, if there's a source of ions, electrons, and let's face it, the Earth is replete with electrons, especially moist Earth, and it's right by a lake there, right? So if you suddenly fire up this ring magnet, especially when we're talking about creating a hyper-positive field. See, there's something they don't tell us about CERN. They want us to believe that they're just smashing a couple of protons together, which they can, but that's not all they can do with it. You see, they can fill the entire 27-kilometer run with a steady stream of protons back to back. And if you have then another stream of protons entered the other way, all of them collide in the time it takes for them to make their journey. And in doing so, if they're colliding in phase, all of their positive voltage values get added together, and you end up with this hyper-positive filament that's a ring that's 27 kilometers circle. Now, if you create a hyper-positive field on one side of a boundary, the law of conservation of energy means you're going to have a hyper-negative field outside of it. So basically, they hyper-electrify the ground, within the ring assembly, and all those electrons that are being freed and moved, they're going to coalesce on anything that has high electrocapacitance. Now we enter this mysterious statue of Shiva. I researched using AI. I want to know what it's made out of. It's an undisclosed alloy. There is no, the story goes that there is no disclosed mention, no published mention of what the metal alloy used in its construction is. And I can tell you right now, it sure ain't bronze. It's not bronze. And the worst thing is, in some of my recent chats with OpenAI, it alleges that it was bronze. And I said, where is this information coming from? And it gave me a few links. And the funny thing is, when I wanted those links, the word bronze wasn't in any of them. How's that for a mystery, Tim?
Now, what are you suggesting?
Still interested?
Now, okay, so Lord Shiva, the statue, there's some kind of indication here that you're suggesting that this big CERN they're building has an ulterior motive, and it's not the Mandela effect. Is it some kind of super weapon? Is it going to rip?
Absolutely. So that's a directed energy weapon. You betcha. Absolutely. Yes. It's a destroyer, right? With Shiva, the destroyer. What are they destroying?
Okay.
Well, I think all the wildfires we've seen with.
Okay, look, I'm willing to entertain this. However,
and so they fire.
I would say this: it's likely that because I believe the nuke, the invention of the atom bomb, was a psyop to destroy objective reality and put us into this closed system with this science fiction weapon. And I kind of think that CERN is destroying reality, or has the potential to, in the same way, insofar as that our belief in it gives it power over us, power over the paradigm. It's like an idol, and their priesthood holds it up, and it reinforces their model. So I don't know if it's literally a destructive weapon, as you say. I hope not. But I do think it has that position, it has that utility.
Well, this is hopium. Listen, hey, Tim, you don't subscribe to hopium, do you?
No, no, no. And look, if there's a black hole
I use
about
the
to
word.
open
I
in
heard you
China,
use the word hope. I heard you definitely use that word hope.
now, hey,
You hope it,
a commenter
right?
Elephant Tusk says, "Is CERN a weapon to pierce the astral realm?"
Well, it already has. It's already caused what I call enough cognitive sabotage in our upper minds, right? Because that's the microcosm. The upper regions of our mind are the astral realms, one and the same. We've already established that, right? So he's quite right. Yes.
You know, I'm glad you pointed this out because we talk about this stuff a lot, and I've been saying that space is a metaphor for controlling our inner space, our minds. So it's not a coincidence that
Okay, it has to be. Well, it can't be anything else.
and the leading polluter of low Earth orbit with space junk is Elon Musk. And who's the leading polluter of cyberspace with mind junk? Elon Musk. Cyberspace, outer space, metaphors for controlling our minds. Thus,
It's a direct parallel. It's not just a suggestion. It's a complete and perfect parallel. 100%.
yeah, it's a layered
100%.
story that we're. It's good
Yes,
writing. It's good
they're
writing.
the nexus points of the macrocosmic collection. It's the nexus. They become the nexus points of all of these transactions, the psychic nexus points. Yes, you're 100. You're 100% on it. And now I'm going to ask you: of all the pickles floating around, which is the one you think is getting in the way most often, so we can get it out of the way? What do you think is the most fruitless cul-de-sac of all right now? Cloning, Hollywood clones, what? Whether or not
Okay,
Taylor
good question.
Swift
Good question.
employing.
I would actually argue that the anti-V, the anti-shot agenda, is a major stumbling block.
Oh, really? Oh, so you believe that one right now needs clarification for people? People need to be more clear on what that was about?
Well, I think that's one of the main things that keeps people stuck in the political horseshoe. I don't think that the truthers will ever escape until they let go of what I believe is simply
All right, then I guess.
yeah.
Oh, okay, well, I'll have you know that I majored in math and sciences, including biology. And I could tell you a few things about that, too.
Well, let me just say this.
Okay.
Just so you may not know, my perspective is this, that the fact that it's a debate, left and right, and they're debating over what is supposedly an objective cure or solution to a problem, makes me look at this thing in the frame of it being mind war. But I think what they've done is this. Society's been divided into traditional values, and it leans right, and then progressive left, and that's utopianism, where they worship science. Science is savior. And the people who worship science and scientism and all this, they don't believe in sin, and they don't believe in a God that will judge us, because they've moved past that. Yet they believe in aliens, they believe in climate change, and they believe in pandemics, which empower their priesthood to save them. Whereas on the right wing, they reject all that, but they still believe in traditional concepts of sin. And they don't believe in the new injectable Eucharist. They don't believe in the mainstream media church. They believe in their old churches. So I'm saying it's just a schism they introduced into society. And truthers are one half of that coin, and they're going to be stuck there forever. So I think it's a lost cause, in my opinion.
Well, because they're mirrored, because they are mirrored double paradigms. Mirrored double paradigms, because both sides subscribe to cognitively dissonant false narratives, and those narratives are always paired up. It's
exactly.
dialectic,
Look,
right?
I have an axiom, number 47, in the Autohoaxology 101 book, and it's simply this: if any of these psyops exhibits this bifurcation, where you can choose based on your political predilection what to believe about it, then it's fake. Because reality isn't split into two like that. Reality isn't partisan.
Oh?
You know,
Are you sure? Are you sure? Are you absolutely sure of that, Tim?
What I mean is that.
What about the future? I agree with you. I agree with you. I agree with you. I'm just saying, are you sure about that in the context of all realities, past, present, and future?
I'm saying that with any major psychological operation, if it has one of the hallmarks of it being a psychological operation is that it has a specific political utility to the left and a specific political utility to the right, and it's mutually antagonistic, and it's always down this political schism perfectly. It's the duality that they encode into every
I know
issue.
exactly. I know exactly what's bothering you. I know exactly what's bothering you. I'm going to tell you. Here we go. What's bothering you, and rightly so, and it should be bothering more people, is this. No matter what we talk about or what we debate about, the one thing that always keeps coming back to is this idea of whether or not we do have, indeed, truly have free agency and free will, or whether we have to subscribe to some future narrative that's already established. In other words, are we going to be able to choose what's going to happen in the future, or do we have to acquiesce to a script of any kind in the first place? What if the future is not so much the tip of the spear, but what if it's a matter of seeing the fork in the road ahead?
Okay.
What if people
okay,
aren't
okay.
able to make sense of...
You have made, look, you are actually correct about
You
this
understand?
in large part. That what my main contention here is that there's a worldview monopoly, and we're all following a program like Truman in the Truman Show, and we're recognizing lies. And so, like, we're in a worldview whose parameters are false. We have false explanations that kill curiosity for most people, and since their curiosity is killed, they don't exercise their free will. They go with the program. And so here I am, diverging from that. And so my interest here is in finding out how much creative control the worldview monopolists have over this quote realm. Is it something that can be in any way diverted from, or are we more or less, as you said, predestined to whatever they project onto the screens? It's an interesting question. I wouldn't say I'm bothered by it, but yeah, I am certainly driven to
No,
test
maybe
it.
that's the wrong word. I'm not going to say bothered. That's the wrong word. Bothered,
But
probably.
I got
the
you. I
best
got your
choice
point.
of words
I
is
got
not
your
bothered.
point.
I would say,
Agitated or
yeah. Okay. So
activated.
here we go. Now, here we go. Now, ready? Here's a concept. Here's a concept I'd like you to entertain for a moment. Here we go. The idea of a prophetic wild card.
Like the Neo in the Matrix, the anomaly.
Wild. The anomaly.
That would be us,
Now,
the uncontrolled
I can
opposition.
guarantee, Tim.
Look, we are this think tank.
Oh.
We're the only think tank, and I'm not exaggerating, not being hyperbolic at all. This is the only think tank established on
I
the
know.
premise that we are recognizing the worldview as a model as such, and not operating from within it. So we are kind of in that area, and it doesn't have a platform, which is why we're creating it. Because every position you take in Trutherville is specifically a political horseshoe mirror of something on the opposite side in Woketown. We've diagnosed this whole stage. We've figured out their game. And as they say in the movie War Games, the only winning move is not to play. And I fully subscribe to that.
Not to play. Okay, so that's the first order of business, is not to get drawn into the cul-de-sacs, which means then, here we go. You say you invite debate, but let me ask you, and it's a very important question, what is the ultimate purpose of holding any debate? What's the purpose of debate ultimately?
Shining a light on bad argumentation to remove it. That's my purpose. A lot of debates end up
In
nowhere,
other words,
but I'm talking about the structure of the arguments. That's my objective, exposing that.
okay, so the debate, so the purpose of the debate, if the argument is structured as it ought to be, is to achieve resolution.
Yes,
Because that's how we begin
yes.
all debates. We say we say the word resolution, and then we state it, right? That's how it works, right? That's formal debating. Resolution, and then we state it. Isn't that how it works?
Yeah, and if there's no resolution, it's not
Then
a
we
real
have to
debate.
choose.
It's just a, I mean, I don't see very many debates that end up with progress. And it doesn't mean you have to sway the audience or people have to choose sides, but rather we agree
Indeed.
that this claim has no basis or this evidence can be dismissed. And I think that's where we get to a more objective viewpoint. And I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that we're the only objectivists when it comes to media critics.
No. Okay, here you go. I want to ask you, what is the method by which any or all debates break down? And it's very important because, you see, I don't know if people recognize they probably do, but forget just how significant it is, because it's actually a very criminal device that's employed by, let's just call them gangsters in the witness box. When the debate breaks down is the moment that anyone making their resolution refuses or fails to answer a fundamental question, which is, show us the receipt for that transaction.
Yeah, look, I just made this rule 2 days ago. I said, I'm willing to debate anybody on chemtrail theories, Mandela effects, or space stations.
As long as they bring a receipt. As long as they bring a receipt.
Bring your own video. You can't use NASA's. Bring your own recording of a chemtrail, or bring your own Mandela effect residue. You can't refer to YouTube or TikTok as evidence. We can't allow that into the debate.
You can't, because that's called secondhand, because that's secondhand evidence.
Secondhand. Right. And hearsay.
That's fun. Yeah, that's juris universalis. That is a universal tenet, axiom of law. That's what it means to be an eyewitness. Not, a friend of mine told me. No, that's not good enough. So you're right. You are adhering to juris universalis with that. Yes.
Interestingly, I came up with the term "hearsay" as a way to describe hearsay that, as we experience it today, where most people see it on TV or YouTube and they believe it. And I thought this term "hearsay" is key to unwrapping a lot of the false arguments people accept, argument from the screen's authority. But interestingly, after I made the term "hearsay" known, the Department of Homeland Security held a "hearsay Day," and they hijacked my hashtag, and they said, if you see something, say something. And I'm like, wow,
say something.
They stole it from us. But yeah, that's how most people operate.
That was the mantra of crime. That used to be the mantra of Crime Stoppers up here. They actually had it on. They had it on a highway, on a billboard.
Yep.
If you see something, say something.
Yeah, well, they took "say" from me, but
actually, even the bus operators here had that on their in-bus adverts. They basically, if you see something, say something, and they showed a passenger whispering to a driver about some inappropriate behavior on the bus. Well, that's the mantra of a surveillance society, right?
Yeah, paranoid.
That's what it is.
Here's something too, because a lot of truthers think they have the moral high ground because they're just warning us about potential threats like 5G towers or chemtrails. But the thing is, paranoia and stress are weapons used against us in the mind war. And so I think that there's this sense of I'm awake because I'm agitated, and if you're not angry, you're not paying attention. And I'm like, if you're angry, Big Brother triggered you. I don't subscribe to the idea that
That's
to be
correct.
I often say the truthers are having a nightmare versus the normies who are just dreaming, but neither of them are awake.
Yes, because the vital aspect to all NLP is emotional association, and the term "hearsay," that proves to me that you're a semiotics disciple. You understand that meaning is conveyed not just by words, but by all forms of symbols and visual representation. So that's why now it's not just about hearsay. We understand now that the principle applies in all media of communication, all forms, all languages, even music.
Right.
And music is par excellence, the number one means by which people can invite cognitive dissonance into their minds. Because when you put absurd nonsense for a lyric and you give it a great beat and a catchy hook, you'll infect people's minds big time. Because they'll repeat that phrase in their head, and you could program people. So yeah, that's how incredibly powerful it is. Because who's going to deny this?
Jim Morrison, The Doors, Jim Morrison said, who controls the media controls the mind. And coming from him, the son of Admiral Morrison, likely knew what he was
Gulf
talking
of
about.
Tonkin, the
Yep.
Gulf of Tonkin instigator.
Yep. Hey, a commenter,
That's the whole Laurel Canyon scene.
Charles Sparkle says, I've been unable to listen to music for many years, and I think this is why. Yeah, I've become very cognizant of the fact that we're eyes wide shut, that we are essentially receptacles, trash receptacles for whatever garbage Big Brother's dumping into our minds to program us. But I think you
Yes.
can be inoculated by awareness, but yeah, the fact is, you are programmed by default until you deprogram.
Yes, because that's what lucid hypnosis is. See, because we're accustomed to watching the person get put to sleep before. That's the television. That's the popular depiction for the sake of us being blinded to the reality of lucid hypnosis. It's not just what happens while we're drifting off to that strange sleep state, that suggestive brainwave state. No. We're talking about being programmed while we're fully alert.
Very good points that you're making here. I'm glad you brought this up because we're often talking about the programming and predictive programming, how we may not even, there's no way actually that you could be fully cognizant of every bit of information you're getting from a movie or a video game. It's so immersive, but just because you're not consciously appreciating every nuance doesn't mean it's not ending up as part of your frame of reference. And that's what most of predictive programming is.
They have to be.
It's frame of reference.
It has to be. That's electromagnetic theory. Tim, you're right. Tim, science backs you up because that's fundamental electromagnetic theory. If the signals are making their way to the sensory organs, whether we pay attention to them or not does not at all change the fact that the stimulus is being made.
Yes. I've arrived at
100%.
that, and I'm like, okay, this explains so much. It has quite a bit of explanatory power, which again I think it makes the case for us for auto hoaxing that when you're approaching media, your starting point should be skepticism. That you should always decide to be the arbiter of what you believe.
It has to be. It has to be, because again, we're not really eyewitnesses, and the irony is that the Channel 7, which was an ABC affiliate in Buffalo, they called it Eyewitness News. And that the irony of it, we had it programmed into our minds from the longest time now that when you're watching things depicted on TV, you're watching an eyewitness's news, and it's furthest thing from it. It is not
yes, that is
news.
key. That is the biggest key here. Because anybody who says, oh, it's a false flag, they're ignoring the role that media has, which makes you a false eyewitness. I often say that the screen is not a window to the world, but it's a filter. And people lose sight of that, and that's where they get you. That's the fundamental trick. That is the sleight of mind that has us all in the box.
Would you like me to explain how they succeeded in having everyone buy the... Do you want to know how they were able to pull off 9/11 ultimately, why it worked so well? I'll tell you the whole trick, the big part that people seldom talk about, all right?
Uh-huh.
What they have to understand, this is going to sound like a bombshell, you just get ready for this, but I'll explain in a moment. People believe they saw planes hitting the buildings, right? The problem with that is it doesn't explain why the Air Force wasn't launched to intercept. The reason why they wouldn't have been because nothing showed up on the radar. And the reason why nothing showed up on the radar is because there were no physical planes that struck the building. Every single camera angle where we saw, remember, it was not a live event. We did not see any live footage whatsoever of planes striking the buildings. True or false? True, right?
Right.
Nobody saw any live images. So now, what they did is, in advance, they knew these buildings were wired for demolition. So they had strategically placed cameras, throughout the city and around the complex to get all the choice angles they wanted, for which they already had CGI animations prepared, for which that the moment the explosions happened, they sent the footage off to a clandestine compositing studio, where then they put the CGI planes onto the camera angles, the footage that was acquired. Pretty evil genius, right?
Bravo, magic trick explained. That is succinct, and I think you nailed all the important points here. This is how they augment our reality, and since people think that TV screen is a window to the world, they now believe they are eyewitnesses to something that never even happened.
Oh, now we're going to go deeper down this rabbit hole big time. I believe you're about to go viral pretty soon. That's what I predict. Okay, look, we have more conversations like this, I can guarantee you, Tim. Guarantee it. I'm going to remind you, I came from the other side.
Yeah, you have some
Get what I'm
insights,
saying?
and what you just explained shows me that you have a fundamental insight about how media is not only monopolized, but it's fakeable. And this is what people underestimate, the scale of fakeability, that you can fake something on that scale. It's hard for people to believe unless they understand a little bit about movie production and the coordination that would be involved. Then it's not hard, it's a magic trick.
It's a matter of someone having had enough experience to be able to stitch it together. I don't blame people. I'm going to confess that I have been in the habit of doing that. I'm going to confess that, and that's my fault. Because who's more to blame, the mind control victim or the mind control perp?
That's a very interesting question. I always say it's not your fault, but it's your responsibility to pull yourself out of it. So
amen. Perfect. It's not your fault, but you still have to, do your due diligence. Amen. Perfect. Because I'm going to tell you, you might laugh at this, all right? And it's good laughter, actually. When I meet people anew, I'm getting to know them, and I want to give them an idea of where the question that people ask when you meet people, what's your background? What are they really asking, Tim, when someone wants to know, hey, so what's your background?
Frame of reference? Perhaps.
Well then, what do you think they more often than not mean? Do they want to know what our experiences in life have been, or what part of the world we're from, or what nationality we are, or what categorization can they place us in before they have to listen to what we say?
Right.
90 seconds.
Okay, heads up here. We have 90 seconds left. Really quick here. We have 90 seconds left on the call clock. No big deal, but go ahead. You have the floor.
Well, before we run out of time then, what's your schedule like? 'Cause, I mean, if I wanted to call in again, I'd like to have a good idea when you're going to be on.
Okay, best thing is this. Subscribe.
Do you have a regular schedule?
Yes, I do. It's pretty much regular. Usually it's a couple hours earlier than this. But if you go to ips.monster,
60 seconds.
you will get live stream notifications before we go live. And you will also, if you're subscribed to the YouTube channel, I give notices in advance, and it makes it very easy for you to reach me via comments. And then if you want to call in, it makes it very much easier to do so. You can plan on it. So yeah, I look forward to hearing more from you, and I'm sure we'll have comments on this episode that I can address next time we talk. So if people want you to build on what you've said. So thank you very much for calling in tonight. We appreciate it.
Well, it's been my pleasure, man. And listen, I've got your email address, so you'll probably know it's me when I send you an email. And if you want, you can coordinate with me at your convenience if you want to talk about any particular thing, and then I'll go dig up whatever I can get on it and then bring that to the table.
10
any way
seconds.
I can help, man, because what we're doing is necessary. This is not just a vain pursuit or just to have fun. There are serious stakes here, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, thank you for the call, and I'll continue along this line. All right. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
And
God bless, man. Take care.
Likewise. Okay, so phones are down now, but look, that caller and I went over a lot of different areas. We touched on a few things, but I think we honed in on the important stuff. And anything that you want to go back over, like the walk-in thing, or CERN, or his take on Urza Pound and infamy, etc., we'll have him back on here soon. So, and also, just as I said to the caller, subscribe to the newsletter. It's free. You can become a paid member if you choose. There are perks, but free. You do get live stream notifications, and I send you archives via email that night, usually that evening or the following morning. But the commenter suggested that we're going to go viral soon, and in a sense, yeah, I don't think we're going to go viral in the usual way, because what we're doing is so singular. But what will become is unignorable. That's the thing. And that's when I say we need to Oppenheimer the world stage, or the Auto Hoax 2024 Planet Killer Asteroid on its way. And it's basically what we're bringing here, which is an informed perspective, informed non-belief. Ollie Goering says, I want to hear more from the caller in the future. Jay Dick said, if you can get, yeah, look, here's something at the very end. The way he described how 9/11 was pulled off, that right there, that is worth everything, worth the entire length of the call just for that little clip. We definitely covered a lot of ground, but we're talking about the creation of mass illusion and how it's really just a matter of relying upon the technical expertise of our best filmmakers, coordinating with the right agencies. But what he said about how the planes didn't detect anything, the Air Force, of course they didn't. And there were 88 drills. Look it up, NORAD, 88 drills, the NR National Reconnaissance Office, NRO, 88 drills on 9/11, for 9/11. And how many movies and video games and books and comics were all drilling us mentally, internally for 9/11. We experienced it in advance. We already lived it in our dreaming mind, in our subconscious, eyes wide shut. We had already been given the program that we would all follow, which we did, like Truman's in our mass Truman Show. Mark Johnson says, thank you for the call. Yeah, and look, that is our format, open phones for open minds, and this long form allows us to flesh out any kind of nuance, any sort of rabbit trail people go down. And not everyone here is on the same sheet necessarily, but I think we all agree that skepticism and media criticism is our starting point. We're not paranoid conspiracy theorists. We're media critics, which it's important. We have to define ourselves, because the media will define us as, oh, they're terrorists. Oh, you don't believe in moon landings, you must be a terrorist. That's their argumentation. I pointed out that they used to say you're a conspiracist into you're a conspiracist. Lean Dion says he said CERN was a direct energy weapon. Right. I would say that CERN is a reality destroying weapon, but not the material world, but rather the hyperstition. It's just a prop. Like, for example, you have various gods that people used to believe in and worship, and I would say that the mushroom cloud is a war god. That the mushroom cloud, the atom bomb, is a god construct. Gaia is a god construct, a god that the atheists will believe in. And I think dew would likely fall in that same category. Anx G says perhaps he can let us know what he thinks about big feets next time. Yeah, one of the big mysteries about Bigfoot, the Sasquatch, is why it's Bigfoot singular. Well, it's because it's always only one footprint. There's never a trail. Maybe it's just some big monopod. But I think that's a mystery. Why is there only one footprint at a time? Like, how does that even make sense? Leo Freak says, I honestly don't think he understands how long and how deep this channel has been in this. It's going to be difficult to drop something that will blow our minds. Yeah, jaded media critics, direct energy weapons, we've heard it all. But many valid points were made, and I hope to have more conversations in the future. By the way, the phone number on the screen is the one that we're going to be using from now on. You can call and you can remain on hold, and you can pretty much listen live. Okay, let's see here. Charles Sparkle says, I didn't know is only ever one single footprint. Well, I don't know how many Bigfoot sightings have the prints along with it, but I've only ever seen single Bigfoot prints. I've never seen like tracks leading somewhere. But there's no shortage of alleged Bigfoot prints. And I'm not a big believer. I'm not a believer in Bigfoot. I just bring it up as an example of things inserted in a non sequitur fashion into the realm of possibility without having been established first. So, for example, you're out camping and you hear something rustling in the bushes. Multiple choice, Bigfoot's not on there. Sorry, it's a raccoon, it's a deer, it's a squirrel, it's another camper, but it's not Bigfoot. You don't include that. And this space station is where I compare it. I'm like, well, people will say, I saw a light in the sky. Maybe it was a UFO. Maybe it was a space station. Well, no, those two things fall outside of this multiple choice. They haven't been established to exist. So you have to default to what is known and not default to the supernatural, which is what too many people want to do. All right, let's see here. Comments. Very interesting comments. As always, we have the best think tank as far as I've seen. A couple of things, too, I want to point out. It's time to move forward with the debates. So if somebody's willing to debate, you have to bring your own evidence. But Mandela effects, space stations, and chemtrails. And now that I've been calling out this debate, I'm like, where are these chemtrail believers? Like, I've dropped the gauntlet. If you believe in it, let's talk about it. John Francis 6.0 says, I've been watching early Friends in the last few weeks. A lot of 9/11 programming and odd symbolism in backgrounds. Right. And Friends figured prominently in Leave the World Behind. And Matthew Perry's ominous death on 10/28/2023 had some significance. Lunar eclipse and his character Chandler Bing. His birthday is 4/8, which was this solar eclipse. Fascinating connections there. Leave the World Behind and Friends. The last, I think it's called The Last One, the episode. Okay, let's see what else we have here. I'm following up on your comments. Okay, you signed up. Excellent. Okay, good. And yeah, where are we coming from? This is, if you're new to this channel, we've taken skepticism to what the mainstream would be considering an extreme. But I think it's important to stand on what you know and not be cowed, not be bullied. And that's how they usually control people. Like, oh, you can't say that's fake. There are people, there are families who are crying, they're grieving. And they used to use these emotional appeals to prevent people from calling fake fake. But the beginning of wisdom is to call things by their right names. Is it Confucius or someone? We have to be precise in what we label things. And that's just a starting point. And if it's a hoax, it's a hoax. And if you discern something to be fake and you're an informed non-believer, you can stand on it. You don't have to kowtow. My point of it being, if we continue to associate with the majority of truthers, we're going to be drowned out by a lot of people who believe a lot of stuff that's fake. And we're a different species. We've evolved. And they're not changing, and they're not going to change because they're programmed. So you have to leave the alternative Truman Show of alt media. That's my bottom line here. That's my objective. And I think we will be getting there by our approach, our methodology. Suspension. The key point here, suspension of judgment. The auto belief, the reaction to the media programming, that's what the caller was referencing, NLP. That's the MK ultra culture. Mind control. Mass mind control. How many times have we talked about this already? Edward Bernays, Netflix, Sigmund Freud. Like, obviously, they figured this out a long time ago. All right, this is One-Eyed Jack and the Shells. Death to the ball. We'll continue this conversation tomorrow.
Death to the ball, we are seeking.